Folks, I'm not trying to depress anybody. I'm just being realistic. This stuff's not going to end. I mean, how many of you in this audience went to vote in 2008 and for only one reason voted for Barack Obama? You thought doing so would finally bring an end to all of this racial strife because you, as a white person, I'm presuming, voting for a black man would demonstrate to every African American for once and for all that you're not a racist, that we aren't racist, that we can elect a black president after we have made a black, overweight woman the richest TV entertainer in the country, Oprah. And how'd that work out for you? We have the first African-American president, and they, the African-Americans, are as unhappy, ticked off, and angry as ever. I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse with this, but it's important to realize this. It didn't work. To listen to Obama and Eric Holder and now Loretta Lynch and anybody else in the regime, this country is worse than it's ever been, race-wise. How can that be? We've had 6 counting years of an African-American president. And by the way, the African-American community is more ticked than ever because they were expecting all kinds of things to change for them, and they haven't. They've gotten worse. And their first elected president seems more interested in illegals from Central America and South America and Mexico than he does about them. You'd be mad, too. You can't find jobs. Black unemployment in this country, youth black unemployment, 27%. Adult black unemployment, 14 or 15%. Then you hear in Baltimore these people running around blaming the fact that there aren't any jobs. Who's running the show? Whose policies are in place in Baltimore? Whose policies are in place in New Orleans? Whose policies are in place in Detroit? Whose policies are in place in New York City? There's a simple answer. Liberal Democrat. Now, you go to a state run by a Republican governor. It's got a Republican legislature with him and has had it for a while. Check the unemployment. It's way below the national average. Check tax code. It's way down. You have vastly more prosperity and enjoyment of life in those states. As long as African Americans are going to vote the Democrat candidate 93% every 4 years, this isn't going to change, folks. It isn't going to change. This is part of the agenda. These are not abnormal occurrences. They're actually quite regular. It's when they happen is when the left gets in gear and tries to blame them on things that are totally irrelevant to it. And thus want you to believe that white cops are murdering black kids seemingly every month, every week, every day. It doesn't happen anywhere near that frequently. Doesn't matter. That's what they want you to think. This BS advances the Democrat Party agenda, folks. There's no end to this. This kind of thing happening in Baltimore is a perfect event for them to claim the need for more power. Federal level, power over police departments, power over education curriculum. Note what these guys say. Note what these city leaders in Baltimore say when they try to figure out what's causing this. Bad education system, no jobs. Yeah, right. Well, whose fault is that? Mr. Civic Leader, are you not to blame for the fact there aren't any jobs in your city? It's your policy. Are you not to blame for the horrible state of education, you and your liberal buddies? What's the solution? We need more funding. We need more money. We need job training centers. We need more job centers, and we need more schools, and we need more federal government. And that's what the answer always is. And they get it. The people don't. Just like the Clintons get the money that goes to the foundation, the liberal leaders, wherever they are, happen to get most of the federal money that flows into some locale. Somewhere, somehow, by crook or hook, they get the money. Or they get the use of it. But the intended recipients, the so-called beneficiaries, don't see a dime. And yet their leaders run around and tell them how hard they're working for them, how much compassion they've got for them, how they know they're oppressed, how they know those Republicans are just waiting to be all racist on them and everything. But they're out there to protect them. And then when the protection doesn't happen because the mayor calls the cops off, town blows up and burns up. And they blame the cops. Because young black people have been told since the day they were born that cops are the enemy, cops are the problem. Bambo, mayor blames cops, president blames cops, stupid cops, whatever. Yep, exactly what the kid's been told his whole life. Where are my Beats headphones? Those may not even be popular anymore because that's Apple. Jay-Z needs to come out with some headphones now. Save that stupid Tidal streaming service he's got that's about to be buried. Yes, I know this stuff, Mr. Snerdley. Now, the question, why didn't any of this happen in North Charleston, South Carolina? I mean, there you had a really evil, racist white cop who murdered a black man in cold blood, shot him in the back while he was running away. I mean, if you want a Ferguson, there it was. And you listen and you listen and you read and you watch and you don't hear a damn thing about it. Why is that? Why wasn't the Reverend Jackson on the way into town? Why wasn't the Reverend Sharpton on the way into town? Why didn't the NAACP and the Nation of Islam, who, by the way, are big in Baltimore right now, the mayor is even out there thanking them. The Fruit of Islam is working with the Crips and the Bloods. You know a city is in dire straits when the gangs are the solution to the problem. And you've got city leaders bragging about the fact they put the Crips and the Bloods together to put aside their differences for a day to clean up the area today. The Crips and the Bloods working with maybe the Fruit of Islam. I don't know. Why didn't that happen in North Charleston, South Carolina? Well, you could say it's because law enforcement dealt with that immediately and openly. That cop was charged 5 seconds after the video was seen. That cop is gone forever as soon as it was seen. But it still, even so, happened. It was a real-life example of what the civil rights community tells us happens every day, and they're not there making hay out of it. Only because the cops there dealt with it immediately. What was that matter? Here you have what happened in North Charleston, South Carolina is exactly what they tell you happens every day in this country. Now you have Baltimore. Nothing like what happened in Charleston, North Charleston, South Carolina, happened in Baltimore. And that's where everybody is, because this is part of the agenda. It's the way the agenda is advanced. That's why these things are never going away. And if you don't believe me, let me quote to you none other than Booker T. Washington from 1911. Over 100 years ago, Booker T. Washington. For those of you in Rio Linda, he had a group called the MGs. Their last hit was Green Onions in 1968. Booker T. Washington said this 1911 he said this, there is another class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. Booker T. Washington, 1911, more than 100 years ago. Grievance industry. He's talking about the Reverend Jackson and Al Sharpton. And you pick your name. Anybody else alive today doing this kind of stuff? He's talking exactly about them. They do not want it to stop. They do not want it to go away. They do not want the Negro to lose his grievances. Means they don't want anything solved because they do not want to lose their jobs. There were race hustlers even back in the day of Booker T. Washington. There were race hustlers back in the days of slavery. This isn't going to end. This is not going to end until the Democrat Party somehow, some way, is ever held accountable for the crap they have visited on this country. You know, there's also a variation of the Limbaugh theorem at play here. Do you remember the Limbaugh theorem? Limbaugh theorem was created by me to help people understand how Barack Obama was never held accountable for any of the negative impacts of his policies. And the way he pulled it off was to, even as president, never appear to stop campaigning. He never really appeared as governing. He was always positioning himself as being opposed by powerful forces that were trying to undermine him and to keep him from winning, even though he'd already won. And there was always this invisible, powerful force trying to sabotage everything. So he'd go on the campaign trail. He'd go out and do a speech. 2 years into his presidency, make it look like a campaign appearance, like he's seeking votes, seeking support, even though his policies have been implemented and they are running their course and they're creating havoc. And he's out there making it look like he's opposed to the very thing that's happened because of him. And as far as the low information voters are concerned, he's blameless. He's fighting the same things they want fought. He's trying to fix the same things they want fixed. They haven't the slightest idea. He's the one screwed them up in the first place. That's the Limbaugh theorem.